My name's Chris Mueller, and this is Everyday Catholic at Home. Now, in this series, I answer questions from you, the viewer. Questions can be submitted on the contact page at everydaycatholic.com, or you can just click the link in the notes. Now, on to our first question. What if somebody dies and they'd never been introduced to Jesus? Well, does that mean they go to hell?
That escalated quickly.
It's true that the church teaches baptism is necessary for salvation, but what happens if a person isn't baptized? Okay, so it seems pretty straightforward. The church teaches baptism is necessary. If a person isn't baptized, well, but remember, God is love. Now, He desires that all people would be saved, and so maybe it's not so cut and dry as you might think. Now, to get a better understanding, we need to take a look at the different kinds of baptism. And yes, there are different types of baptism. Baptism by water. Okay, this is the baptism that most of us are thinking of when we think about baptism. It's babies in white gowns, and RCIA candidates on Easter. This is what we would consider the normal way, but it's not the only way.
Baptism of blood.
That sounds like the name of a metal song or a horror movie, and yes, I was very tempted to use a clip from the movie Blade here, but I'm not going to do it. See, a baptism of blood refers to a martyr's death. Someone who dies for the faith would receive the fruits of baptism even if they weren't formally baptized. Now, in the case of someone who'd wanted to be baptized, but for some reason had died before the sacrament was administered, well, the church would consider that person to have received a baptism of desire. For instance, say that someone is preparing to come into the church, but a meteorite strikes the earth right as they're getting ready to come in. God isn't up in heaven like, well, sucks to be you. No, God is love. And so basically it comes down to this. Did the person die in a relationship or desiring a relationship with the Lord? And did they take steps to move towards Him? Well, if so, the church says then yes. They were baptized or may have been baptized by desire. In the case of martyrs, by blood. But what about people who die who had never even heard of Jesus Christ? Or worse, what about people who've been misinformed about Him their entire lives? Well, what happens to them? Well, good news. There's even hope for people who've never heard about Jesus Christ or were misinformed their whole lives. And here's what the church tells us in the document Lumen Gentium. Those also can attain salvation who through no fault of their own did not know the gospel of Christ or His church, yet sincerely seek God and moved by grace, strive by their deeds to do His will as it is known to them through the dictates of conscience. Meaning that if someone through no fault of their own hasn't received the gospel explicitly, well, that doesn't mean the Lord hasn't been working on them. And if they're following grace and seeking Him, even if they don't realize that they're seeking Him, even if they don't even know they're following grace, well then yes, it's possible that they can get to heaven. But it isn't the best way. Why? Well, when I was growing up, there was this one kid who knew how to do a backflip. I mean, it was awesome. Now, he'd never been taught. He just sort of figured it out. Okay, that kid was the exception to the rule. Most kids who've ever tried to do a backflip without a coach, well, they end up landing on their heads and taking trips to the emergency room. Now, on the other hand, with a good coach, doing a backflip is hard, but it's not impossible. My wife, who's a gymnastics coach, she actually taught me how to do a backflip. So what's my point? I can do a backflip. No, that's not the point. The point is that while it's possible for someone who has never evangelized to come to salvation through Christ, it's like learning to do a backflip without a coach. It's possible, but a lot harder, and most people aren't going to be able to pull it off. So that's why it's essential that we, who know Jesus, share Him with the world.